This is a follow-up to a meeting we had about 3 weeks ago at Colby Cathedral High School covering the same issue. And we want to welcome you and thank you for coming and being a part of this very important event. First thing I'd like to do is acknowledge Michael Daly from the Connecticut Post for the newspaper's sponsorship of this event. Michael? And of course, we want to thank Housatonic Community College for allowing us to conduct this meeting here in this beautiful Beacon Hall. To start with, I'd like to ask the mayor of our city to come up, Mayor Bill Finch.
Well, thank you all for joining us this evening. We have a great turnout, and we want to focus on the issue of violence, especially gun violence in our community. There's a table over here in the front that's open. Thanks. I think the last meeting was very successful. We did come out with a long list of particulars that we all thought we should be doing a better job of. If you would like to stay in touch electronically, please see Elaine or others and make sure we have your address, your email address, so we can keep you in the loop of the follow-up. There were a lot of really great ideas. I think you've all got the list on your tables. For tonight's meeting, we really want to, captains, we want to work on those great ideas and suggestions and follow up with more specifics, and I'll get to that in just a second. But I want to thank Mike Lawler, who is with the governor, with Governor Malloy, is working on also getting funding for some of these efforts. We have a lot of great ideas, and without the governor's support, we'll be able to go just so far. And I want to thank Governor Malloy for giving us some financial support. And what we really need is an unprecedented level of community involvement. You know, we've said it before, but we need to know what each and every one of us can do in the short run. We talked about a lot of great ideas: fixing our schools, the absence of fathers, the presence of poverty, some of the despair that the children feel. But those, we need to focus on how we can address those in the short run. If we wait for poverty to be eliminated, obviously it's going to be a while before, if we link that to, if that's the only way we think we can stop violence. So one of the examples I'd just like to give you, as I thought about this list over the last few days, you know, I'm passionate about clamping down on illegal guns. As I've said before, the federal government needs to clamp down on illegal guns. If you have a gun show, you can sell without background checks. If you are selling guns illegally and ATF shuts your business down, you can sell your inventory without background checks. These are huge loopholes that the NRA has fought closing for many years. And thanks to the NRA, we have illegal weapons throughout urban America. We've got to clamp those down. But if we wait for that to happen, we won't be able to take action. So we have to talk about taking action regardless of what the federal government does and regardless of what other people may do. Because we all know that many of these acts of violence are unnecessary and can be prevented. I was recently at the U.S. Conference of Mayors meeting, and we heard about ceasefire, which is something that Mike Lawler has looked into to bring to cities in Connecticut. Ceasefire actually works with former gang members and hires them to become interrupters. And they go into the community and find out who has disrespected who has stolen something from somebody, and then is going to have a revenge or a vengeful vendetta. And they go in as interrupters along a public health model, assuming that violence is a disease. That's how they approach it. And they try to stamp out this disease as if it were smallpox or malaria or all the other things that we've successfully fought. And they've had tremendous success. Violence being reduced by some 30 and 40% in neighborhoods. The Focused Deterrence Initiative that we looked at last week with the governor, who's been, again, providing great leadership in this area. So the only thing I ask you to do is, as we hear the short remarks in the beginning and then move to our tables to work on solutions that each of us can be involved with, we have to think about short and medium range solutions that we can do. For example, let me just give you an example. I'm going to stay passionate about the illegal guns in our street. But what I'm going to do is work with the chief to make sure that the question is asked in every crime, where did the gun come from? I can't change Congress, but I can work with our police to find out and get better data so that we can go to Congress and have more information. I can write letters to my congressman to change the law. So I'm going to talk about specifics that I can do in the next 3 or 4 weeks, not, you know, we have to wait for the government to change, because that would be like waiting for hell to freeze over. Right, Rabbi? So we're going to get down to specific actions that we can take, and we don't want to spend a lot of time talking about what we know are the root causes and we all want to get rid of, which is poverty, getting better schools for our children, all those things we're working on. We're going to assume we're working on those, but we're going to think of things that each of us can do, whether we're a prosecutor, whether we're a drug counselor, whether we're a rabbi, whether we're a mayor, or a corner store owner, or a detective, or a state trooper, or an owner of a house on Cowell Street in the East End. We're going to think of what we can do in the next 3 or 4 weeks, and that will be our breakout. So we're going to get away from some of our big generalities and move into more specifics. But I really want to thank you, because as a community, if you look around this room, just about every element of the community is represented, and we need to celebrate that and work on that so we make sure that everybody has their oar in the water and is rowing in the same direction. So I'd like now to introduce Mike Lawler, who's going to fill you in a little bit on what he and the governor have been working on since we met last. Mike is a great advocate for cities, was the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, and understands all of the different felonies and the codes and how those can be leveraged to scare the bejesus out of kids and get them to listen. So Mike Lawler.
Mayor. Hello, everybody. Thanks for coming. I think, as the mayor mentioned, first and foremost, I work for Governor Malloy, and I wanted to express on behalf of the governor his strong support for whatever initiative the people of Bridgeport choose as the most effective way to fight against gun violence. Actually, last week at the Capitol, as the mayor mentioned, the governor had brought in the leadership of the 3 major cities in Connecticut: Hartford, Bridgeport, and New Haven. He also invited the United States Attorney David Fine and some of the key legislators from those 3 cities to talk about what they felt would be an effective policy to reduce the number of shootings and the number of homicides in those 3 cities. So what is it about those 3 cities that's unique? Last year, in 2011, there was 129 murders in the state of Connecticut. 94 of those occurred in Hartford, Bridgeport, and New Haven. That's 80%. And in the vast majority of those murders, the victims were killed with a gun. In the vast majority of those cases, the victims were relatively young men. And in the vast majority of those cases, the victims, and often and almost exclusively the shooters, were young African-American men. And that's why the governor has called this initiative, this policy, focused deterrence. Because we know exactly what the problem is, in other words, where to find it, and we have a lot of resources at our disposal to interrupt it. And those resources come in 2 categories. And this is something the governor stressed very importantly. On the one hand, we have the law enforcement community. On the other hand, we have the community. We have leaders in the clergy, the grandparents, the teachers, the local elected officials, and others who have a direct connection with the very young men who are most at risk here. And we need to use both of those together, not just the law enforcement community, not just the hammer, not just the stick, but also the carrot. There has to be an incentive to move in the right direction. And we know from experience that if you do one without the other, your efforts are doomed to failure. And that's why the governor applauds what Mayor Finch is doing here in Bridgeport to begin to think about a long-term and a short-term solution to this problem. You need to have everybody invested in it. The law enforcement professionals can only do so much. Without the support of the community, and without the leadership of the community, and without the cooperation of the community, their efforts are doomed to failure. And I think you've seen this described, and Bridgeport's no exception in this regard, by the way. You've seen this described recently in the Connecticut Post and elsewhere, where they've talked about this don't snitch mentality. The fact that people don't trust the criminal justice system. Now, whether that mistrust is mistaken or not, it doesn't really matter, because if people don't have confidence in the police and the prosecutors and probation and parole and corrections and all the rest of us that work in the criminal justice field, then nothing good is going to come of that. If people are victims of crime and witnesses to crime and don't cooperate, then nothing good will happen. And so the real challenge for us who are leaders in the criminal justice community is to win that trust. And that's not an easy task. And so these solutions have two parts. The criminal justice system doing what it can do very well: identify, apprehend, prosecute, and incarcerate people who deserve to be treated in that way. But on the other hand, we need the community leaders to give us insight on how we need to respond so that we would have the trust of the community. Now, part of that is to have positive options for people, right? There have to be jobs, there have to be decent schools, there have to be support structures in the community, and you know, over time this has been studied quite a bit. And we know a lot about what works for people that we call ex-offenders. Right? We know that if they're connected to housing, if they're connected to a job, if they're connected to a faith community, if they have mental health or substance abuse issues, if they're connected to treatment, that they're much more likely to be successful. And that's a real challenge to provide these kinds of services. There's a lot of obstacles for people coming out of prison getting a job. Many people, and I've met many people just in this room, right? We had a graduation ceremony not too long ago. A lot of people who are ex-offenders who come out who were being awarded for the progress they had made. They had a job. They had gotten a high school degree. Some of them had gotten a college degree right here at the community college. And they were among the most motivated people I have ever met. Motivated to get a job, motivated to succeed at the job, motivated to win the respect of their own families back. And when we see that, all of us have an obligation to embrace it and to enable it and to help them succeed. Because as they succeed, they are role models for others who are skeptical that this is even possible. People who think the whole system is arrayed against them. It's not fair. It's not going to give them a break. There's no way to succeed. The only way is through the streets and the drug trade, et cetera, et cetera. And plus there's a lot of people for whom their family it's not a biological thing. It's the people they hang with in their neighborhoods. Whether it's an organized gang or not, this has become the family of too many people. And all of us have an obligation to help interrupt that, right? I mean, we all have to be mentors. Whether you're a law enforcement professional or a next-door neighbor or a distant relative or someone on the street or someone who is a community outreach worker, I mean, we've all got this obligation to convince people that on the one hand, if they're involved in violence and guns, they're going to be held accountable in a very serious way. God knows we've demonstrated the ability to lock people up for a long time and keep them there. And we have to be prepared to do that when the circumstances call for it. But at the same time, we have to have a positive option. And so last week when Governor Malloy had brought the mayors together to talk about these things, he made it clear there are two parts to this solution, and it won't work without both parts. We need the criminal justice community to cooperate with each other, state, federal, and local. And that means on the state level, probation, parole, corrections, state police, prosecutors, judges, everybody who works on the state level need to work together. That's why tonight you see from the state we have people from the Office of Adult Probation, we have the Department of Corrections, including parole, we have the state police represented here because we are all in. We want to work with Mayor Finch and Chief Gaudette and the folks here in Bridgeport to accomplish all the goals that I've just mentioned. And on the federal level, last time we had some folks here from the ATF, DEA, I don't know if there's anybody here tonight from that, but I can say I just came from a meeting in David Fine's office, the United States Attorney, talking about this very topic. And the feds are all in as well. I don't know, is Bill Mathis here? Did he get here yet? Well, Bill is one of the people working with the U.S. Attorney's Office and the folks in New Haven on these very same goals. And we are prepared to do the same in Bridgeport. And all the governor expects is that everybody will work together in the law enforcement community and that everybody will understand the importance of having support and confidence in the community. And so I say that because I see both categories in this room tonight, right? We have the law enforcement folks, we have community folks, and this is a joint enterprise here. Now, the final thing I want to say is what we know for sure is that every city is different, right? You can't take something off a shelf and do the same thing in Bridgeport that has been done in Providence or Los Angeles or anything. Every city has its own unique culture, unique neighborhoods, unique community leaders, unique concerns, and unique problems. So whatever the solution is, and I know that the mayor believes this, is going to come from you, the people of Bridgeport. You need to figure it out, what's going to work. We just have resources. We have money, we have folks in the law enforcement community, and beyond that we have all of the other services the state provides, whether it's job training or mental health and addiction services, Department of Children and Families, all these other services that are available, but we just want to focus them immediately on what seems to be the single biggest problem confronting the city of Bridgeport, Hartford, and New Haven, which is shootings and homicides. And that's what we're prepared to do. It's not to say that there aren't other criminal problems that are important. It's just to say this is the one problem that seems to not be going down, not getting better compared to all the others. You know, believe it or not, the crime rate in this country has been steadily trending downward for 20 years. Its high point was late 80s, early 90s. Those of you who are old like me can remember those days. And the number of shootings in Bridgeport was more than twice what it is today. Those were the bad old days. Things have gotten a lot better. In all the other areas of crime, things continue to get better. Statewide, the number of arrests every year are down significantly from the year before. The crime rate continues to trend down. The prison population continues to trend down. And I know some people think that the legislature adopted some policies that have resulted in a large release of inmates from prisons. That's actually not true. I mean, they've adopted policies, but the number of people released from prison, either finishing their sentence or being released on parole or transitional supervision during the first 5 months of this year is exactly the same as it was last year. There was, I think it's 10,050 people in the first 5 months of 2011 finished a prison sentence and were released, either having maxed out or on probation or transitional supervision. This year it's 10,200. So 1.9% difference. So it's essentially the same number. It's a lot of people, 10,000 plus coming out in 5 months, finishing their sentences. But that number's not up. I think we're doing a better job of trying to identify, and you know, Jim Zarenda, the Deputy Commissioner of the Department of Corrections, is here. They've done an extraordinary job of trying to target services on people, and they don't have enough to get the job done right now, right? You need more resources, but things are moving in the right direction, because we know this reentry part of the problem is a serious part of the problem, people coming out of prison. Actually, in New Haven, we figured out that this focused deterrence, we figured out that there's about 400 people in New Haven that are the most likely either to shoot somebody or get shot. And out of that 400, 250 of them are currently incarcerated, and the other 150 are either on probation or parole. I think I said this at the last meeting. So in other words, the state has ownership over all those people who are the most at-risk young men. And so I think we have a special obligation to intervene if we can do so successfully. But it's only going to work with your help. So that's the bottom line. We're ready to help. You guys decide what's the best way to do it, working through the mayor, and the governor is committed that we will bring all our resources, whether it's the limited amount of money we've got available or the thousands and thousands of criminal justice professionals that work for the state that are prepared to help. So thank you, Mayor, for doing this.
Before we hear from Chief Gaudette, I just want to make a little announcement. The city is using its limited resources to start a new business, and it opens tomorrow at 2 o'clock, 2 p.m. at the old Eastern Bag and Paper, and it is run by Adrian Well and the Green Team. We will be hiring those people who are re-entering to do recycling. Specifically, it's going to be a mattress recycling factory where they disassemble mattresses to get the wood and the metal, and they sell that on the secondary market, and they make money. So it's a green business, and it's primarily going to be to give some job opportunities to those re-entering. It's a small step, but I think it's meaningful, and it should grow. So save your old mattresses, and you'll help the re-entry community. Chief Gaudette has some pretty startling information. As you recall, last meeting, he talked about a picture, and he is here to not only update you on the picture, but to talk a little bit about what has happened since our last meeting, and then I think, Frank, you're going to lead us into discussion. Chief?
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I got my visual aid here. Thank you all for coming this evening. I think it's important to acknowledge the presence of our law enforcement partners in the room today. As Mr. Lawler mentioned, Mike mentioned, we have representatives from FBI, DEA, ATF, United States Marshals, the Connecticut State Police, who have been our longtime partners through the Statewide Narcotics Task Force and the Statewide Urban Violence Task Force. As well as we have our local partners here. We have representatives from Stratford, Fairfield, and Trumbull who have joined us in the Statewide Urban Violence Task Force, focused particularly in the Bridgeport region. So thank you all for being here, and members of the public, I don't think I could say it any better than Mr. Lawler did. We need to come together as a community, as one community, a law enforcement community, and the community as a whole. We need to come together, and that's my goal here as part of this forum, for us to be able to come together and find some real short-term solutions to this current urgent issue. So those of you who were here at our last Public Safety Forum may remember this picture. This is a March 2010 picture of 15 males, ages 12 to 20 years old. It was actually taken at the funeral of Anthony Booby Padilla. And this single group, this one small set of gang members in our city has been responsible for what you see up here. The two of them have been homicide victims since then. We've had one stabbing victim. It says 7 shooting victims. It said 6 last time. One of these folks was shot 2 weekends ago here in Bridgeport. We have 5 robbery suspects, and again, those are only robberies that we know about. These folks tend to prey on undocumented people who are fearful of the police and won't call and report these robberies. We know that for certain. So that's all that we can absolutely pin on them. You can see 7 firearm arrests. That number was 6 last time we met. Since that time, there was an individual involved in a shooting incident on Vanguard Street that ended in Stratford, and he was subsequently arrested with the firearm. And 1 carjacking suspect. So this is the kind of group that exists in our community. Different sets of neighborhood groups that can cause serious, serious issues within our community. It's that small number of people that are causing serious amounts of problems. So just to focus in on, if I can figure out how to drag this down. Sorry, I didn't do this when it was warming up. So just to focus in on one individual and to try to illuminate the kind of issues that we're dealing with here on the streets here in Bridgeport, I want to talk to you about Jaquan Rosado, who in March 2009, after there being a shooting incident on the east side in front of a particular house, we received information that there were more guns in that house. We subsequently went into the house and found Jaquan Rosado in possession of a facsimile firearm and another male in possession of the real firearm. In this picture, the one on the left is the fake firearm. It's the facsimile. It looks pretty real though, doesn't it? And then the one on the right in the bag is the real firearm. Jaquan was arrested, convicted, and sentenced to a year in jail. He served almost the year in jail. And these things don't work. And this is a picture that was taken of Jaquan prior to his arrest. See the firearm there on his right side? That's actually the real gun that was found in possession of the second person. So we know that he was carrying weapons. We know that he was using them at the time we found him in possession of the facsimile. So he did his year in jail. In 2010, I believe it was the summer of 2010, Jaquan was released and got into a foot pursuit at Washington Park on the east side with our Violent Crime Reduction Initiative. He was a suspect in Washington Park. They had a foot pursuit. During the foot pursuit, he dropped this facsimile firearm, another facsimile firearm. He was subsequently arrested again, found guilty, and served approximately another year in jail. And then, after being released in December of 2011, we received information that there was going to be a retaliatory shooting at Central High School, that it was an east versus west incident, and that somebody from the east side was coming over to the west side to shoot somebody at Central High School. With that information, we set up on Central High School, and we were able to locate a suspect in a hoodie and a mask. And we tried to stop him. He ran. We pursued. He ran into a crowd of about 200 students who were being released, dismissed, as it were, from Central High School, and ran right through the group, pursued by the police officers. When we finally caught up to him, he was in possession, this time, of a real weapon. And he had every intent of going over there and shooting somebody during dismissal at Central High School. He was rearrested, found guilty, sentenced to 5 years in prison, suspended after 2 years. This is in January of 2012. He was arrested, sentenced to 5 years, suspended after 2 years. He'll probably do about a year and a half of real time in jail, and then he'll be on 3 years of probation. So the urgent issue for us today is young people with weapons who don't seem to be deterred. They don't seem to be able to change the behavior. And really what we're talking about is trying to change people's behavior, especially young people's behavior. And we really believe that the community, together with law enforcement, can come together and find real, quick, short-term, relevant solutions to this issue, because it's our children's lives that are at stake. They're out there now, as we speak, with the weapons. They have motive, they have opportunity. But for the grace of God, another child will die tonight. So that's why we're here. That's why we're here, to try to come up with relevant short-term solutions. Now, I can report to you that since our last public safety forum, we have met and we have come up with some of our own short-term solutions. We now have probation and parole meeting on a regular basis with the Bridgeport Police Department on a weekly basis, and they're cooperating and coordinating probation visits. Thanks to some monies that were freed up by the governor, they'll actually be putting extra details out this summer to make sure that probationers are doing what they're supposed to be doing and where they're supposed to be. We talked recently to the Connecticut State Police. We both share a DUI enforcement grant, driving under the influence enforcement grant. And so we're going to combine our efforts and use that grant money to do DUI enforcement in high crime areas. And hopefully through our visibility and our enforcement, we'll be able to get some of these guns off the street. We've initiated a program where we're gonna do hotspot patrols with our uniformed people based on intelligence received from our task forces, from our gang task force, our narcotics task force. And so we're going to be coordinating with them. Actually, our first meeting, I think, is tomorrow afternoon. And so we're going to be coordinating our resources with them to go into the hotspots where the most present danger is. And lastly, we've had the opportunity to meet with the East End Community Council, and we intend to meet with all of our neighborhood groups, and we talked to them about increasing their presence in the neighborhoods, specifically with relation to our Safe Corridors initiative, which we're doing in cooperation with the Board of Education and Superintendent Vallis, and hopefully to expand the block watch so we have some real visibility on Stratford Avenue all the time, and not just police officers, but caring community members who want to take back their own blocks. And again, we'll be encouraging other neighborhoods to do the same, and we'll be visiting those neighborhoods as we go forward. So I'm asking you today, please, relevant, short-term, effective solutions. We need to curb this spate of violence, this spate of gun violence from our young people in our community. And anything that we can come up with, you know, it's not going to be one thing. We know that. We all know that. It's not going to be one thing. But certainly we're willing to try. We're willing to try. So I thank you very much for your attention. I can't wait to hear what you come up with. Thank you very much.